An Amish groom often marries before he has a house, a farm, or even a place to sleep that belongs to him. There is no honeymoon to delay the problem. There is just a wedding night spent in someone else's home. Here is exactly what happens next. Marrying before house. Amish couples typically marry between ages 20 and 22. At that age, very few young men have accumulated enough savings to purchase land, build a house, or establish an independent farm. The Amish do not believe in waiting for financial readiness before marriage the way many English couples do. Marriage and family formation happen on a timeline set by courtship and faith rather than by bank account balances. The expectation is that the practical living situation will sort itself out after the wedding through family support, community help, and the couple's own labor over the following months or years. The absence of a house is not considered a reason to delay the wedding. The wedding night at her parents'. There is no honeymoon in Amish culture, no trip to a resort, no weekend away from the community. The wedding day itself is long, beginning with a church service that lasts 3 hours followed by feasting that continues into the evening. When the celebration ends, the newlyweds do not depart for anywhere special. They spend their first night as a married couple in the home of the bride's parents in whatever room has been made available to them. The next morning is not a lazy honeymoon morning either. The couple rises early and helps clean up from the wedding festivities alongside everyone else who stayed to help. The practical reality of married life begins immediately, in a house that belongs to someone else the morning after the wedding. Choosing whose home to live in. After the wedding, the couple must decide where they will live while they save toward their own household. The decision typically comes down to whichever set of parents has the most available space. If the groom's family has a spare room or an addition that is not currently occupied, the couple moves there. If the bride's family has more room, they move there instead. The decision is practical rather than symbolic. No one is keeping score about which family the young couple chooses. What matters is available space, proximity to whichever farm or job the groom is working, and which household can most easily absorb 2 additional adults into its daily rhythm of meals, chores, and routines. Sometimes the decision shifts after a few months if circumstances change, with the couple relocating from one set of parents to the other as space or work opportunities require. Alternative housing options. When neither set of parents has adequate space, or when the couple wants a measure of independence sooner, several alternative arrangements exist within Amish communities. A young couple might rent a room above a carriage shop, living in modest quarters directly connected to where the groom works during the day. Some couples rent a small apartment above a garage on a non-Amish neighbor's property, an arrangement that works because English landlords in farm country are often accustomed to renting small spaces to young Amish couples just starting out. Others find a small house on someone else's farm, perhaps a structure originally built for hired farmhands or a retired couple, made available at low rent because the property owner values having a reliable young family on the premises. These arrangements buy the couple a degree of privacy and independence that living with parents does not provide, even though the housing itself is borrowed rather than owned. The trade-off between privacy and cost is one every young couple weighs, based on their specific circumstances and the options available in their particular settlement. The beard. The moment a man marries, his physical appearance changes permanently. Unmarried Amish men keep their faces clean-shaven as required by the Ordnung. Once married, a man begins growing a beard and never shaves it off again, even if he is later widowed. The beard has no connection to mustaches, which remain forbidden among most Amish groups due to their historical association with European military culture. This visual marker means that within any large Amish gathering, no one needs to ask whether a man is married. His beard answers the question from across the room. For the newly married groom living temporarily in his in-laws' house or a rented room above someone's garage, the growing beard is the one visible sign that his situation has changed, even though his housing has not yet caught up to his new status. He may not have a home of his own yet, but every person in his community can see, simply by looking at his face, that he has crossed into a new stage of adult life. Working and saving. The months or years spent living with parents or in a rented space are not idle time. The groom works as hard or harder than he did before marriage, now with the specific goal of accumulating enough capital to establish an independent household. He may work on his father's farm, work for a neighboring Amish business, or take a job with an English employer if the local economy makes that the most efficient path to savings. Every dollar earned beyond immediate living expenses goes toward the eventual purchase of land or the cost of materials to build a house. The bride contributes as well, often through sewing, baking, or helping with whatever business her in-laws or parents operate, with any income she generates also directed toward the couple's savings goal. Living with parents reduces the couple's immediate expenses significantly since they are not paying rent and often share in the household's existing food production from the garden and livestock. This arrangement, uncomfortable as it may feel socially, is financially efficient. The couple can save a much higher percentage of their combined income than they could if they were simultaneously paying for independent housing while trying to accumulate enough capital for a permanent home. The awkward parts. Living with in-laws or parents as a newly married adult carries social and personal friction that the Amish do not pretend does not exist, even though they rarely discuss it openly. The groom living in his wife's parents' house operates under household rules that are not his own. He may defer to his father-in-law's authority on the property even though he is now a married man with his own household responsibilities elsewhere in his life. The bride living in her husband's parents' house faces the classic tension of a new wife learning to navigate a kitchen and household routine that belongs to her mother-in-law while also trying to establish her own identity as a wife. Intimacy between the newly married couple happens within a house full of other people with thin walls and shared spaces that provide far less privacy than either partner experienced even growing up in their own crowded childhood bedrooms. The couple manages this the way the Amish manage most discomfort, through patience, restraint, and the shared understanding that the arrangement is temporary. They do not complain about it publicly. They simply endure it as a known and accepted stage that nearly every Amish couple passes through on the way to their own household. How long this lasts. The duration of this in-between living arrangement varies considerably based on the couple's specific financial circumstances and the local cost of land. In many traditional accounts, the couple plans to remain with the bride's parents only until spring, when warmer weather and the end of the agricultural off-season makes establishing a new household practical. In areas where land remains relatively affordable, a young couple working diligently might transition into their own home within 1 to 2 years of marriage. In high-cost settlements like Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where farmland sells for $10,000 to $20,000 per acre, the saving period stretches considerably longer, sometimes 3 to 5 years. Particularly if the couple is also waiting for a specific piece of land to become available or for an inheritance arrangement to resolve. The arrival of children during this period does not necessarily accelerate the timeline, though it does increase the motivation. Many Amish couples have their first child while still living with parents or in temporary housing, adding another layer of complexity to an already crowded household, but also reinforcing the urgency of establishing their own independent home as quickly as their finances allow. The community builds the house. When the couple finally has enough land or savings to build, the Amish community provides the labor that makes rapid construction possible. A house that would take a single contractor months to build can be raised by a coordinated community workday in a fraction of that time. Men from the church district arrive early in the morning with tools, lumber, and decades of accumulated construction experience. They frame walls, raise the roof structure, and complete major construction milestones in a single day or over a coordinated weekend, working in teams that have done this same task for dozens of other young couples before this one. Women from the community arrive alongside the men, preparing the enormous quantities of food required to feed a work crew of this size throughout the day. This community building tradition dramatically reduces the cost of construction since labor, the most expensive component of any building project, is provided freely by neighbors who expect the same help when their own children eventually marry and need a house built. The groom who could not afford to hire a construction crew discovers that he never needed to, because the community he belongs to functions as that construction crew whenever the need arises. Moving into their own home. The day the young couple finally moves into their own house represents the completion of a transition that began on their wedding day, sometimes years earlier. The house itself is typically modest, built according to the same plain principles that govern every aspect of Amish construction, but it belongs entirely to them. For the first time since marrying, the couple eats dinner in a kitchen where the rules and the routine are entirely their own. They sleep in a room with privacy they have not experienced since before their wedding. The wife establishes her own household management system without a mother-in-law's routines layered over her own preferences. The husband, his beard now fully grown after years of marriage, finally has a home that matches the married status his face has displayed since his wedding day. The transition is not marked by any particular ceremony beyond perhaps a meal shared with both sets of parents who help make the arrangement possible. But the significance is felt deeply by the couple who have spent years working, saving, and living within someone else's household rules in pursuit of exactly this outcome. Their own roof, their own table, their own household, built by their own labor and the community's generosity, finally theirs. What the parents gain. The years spent housing a married son or daughter in their growing family are not a one-sided burden on the older generation, even though the arrangement is typically framed around what the young couple needs. The parents gain immediate and practical benefits from having additional adult labor in the household. A son-in-law living under the roof contributes his physical strength to farm work that an aging father increasingly struggles to manage alone. A daughter-in-law contributes to the kitchen, the garden, and the care of younger siblings still living at home, easing the workload on a mother who may be managing a household with 8 or 10 children of her own. The arrangement also allows the older generation to begin the gradual transfer of farm knowledge and responsibility in a low-pressure setting, observing how their child and new spouse handle responsibility before formally passing along land or business operations. There is an emotional dimension as well that the Amish rarely discuss openly but clearly value. The parents get to witness their grandchildren's earliest years up close, often serving as a second set of caregivers during the demanding early months of a new baby's life. By the time the young couple finally moves into their own home, the relationship between the two generations has typically deepened rather than strained, built on years of shared daily labor and the kind of close proximity that either destroys a relationship or cements it permanently. In most Amish families, it cements it, because both generations entered the arrangement already committed to making it work. What happens when an Amish groom cannot afford to build a house is not a crisis that delays or prevents marriage. It is simply the expected starting condition for nearly every young Amish couple beginning their married life. The wedding happens on schedule, regardless of housing readiness. The wedding night is spent in the bride's parents' home rather than at any resort or honeymoon destination because the Amish do not practice honeymoons in the first place. The couple selects whichever set of parents has more available space or finds alternative housing in a rented room above a shop or a small house on someone else's farm. The groom grows the beard that announces his married status to the entire community, even while his living situation remains unresolved. He and his wife work diligently, saving as much of their combined income as possible while benefiting from reduced living costs under a parent's roof. They endure the social awkwardness of married adult life lived under someone else's household rules, understanding it as temporary and necessary. The duration varies from 1 year to 5 depending on land costs and savings rates, but eventually, in nearly every case, the couple accumulates what they need. And when that day arrives, the community shows up with lumber, tools, food, and decades of construction experience to build the house in a fraction of the time a hired crew would require. The groom who married without a house to his name ends up, often within a few years, standing in a home built by his own labor and his community's generosity, with a beard that finally matches a household that is entirely his own.